Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. In my previous video of expanding my Sculpfun S30 10-watt machine from just having the Y extensions to expanding the Y and X engraving area, I promised to share some of the issues I came across. I found several posts of people complaining about the issues, but there was a lack of answers or solutions to those issues out there over the internet. So let's get into it. If you're building your very first laser engraver, it can be very daunting. I really don't suggest going directly to an XY extension. I started out with the S30 Pro 10 watt with the Y extensions only. Now Sculpfun did really make assembly a breeze with a manual that you can actually read without a magnifying glass. The bags of parts come numbered for each step, and Sculpfun has their own YouTube channel jam-packed with tutorials and how to assemble their machines. Of course, they make it look pretty easy. For me, it was time to expand as my projects seem to be getting bigger and bigger, but you can achieve these without expanding by tiling your artwork. I realize you may be in a rush to get the new toy up and going. It's important to take your time. If you expect precision out of this machine, you really need to be precise when building it. So do it right the first time to prevent having to tear down the machine to do it again, like I had to. No, I'm not OCD for the extra steps that I took and that I'm going to show you today. These were pretty much mandatory steps that the assembly video leaves out. Number 1, you need a flat and level surface. So give yourself plenty of room on a level table that you could easily access the front, back, and sides. You will need at least 4 square feet or 48 square inches of space to house this holy honkin' machine. Consider a workable height for your enclosure, as you need ample room if you ever decide to raise your machine for engraving thicker materials, cord management, access points to be able to do larger materials. So I'd suggest holding off on building an enclosure until you have it fully assembled. When assembling the S30 Pro with the new XY extensions, you will be using original parts, setting aside some of those original parts, but you will also be adding new parts. Let's start with the gantry. This new linear rail is a monster. You will be screwing on this linear rail onto the gantry rail yourself. That rail has the screw holes on it. Double check that you have the yellow warning sticker that says, "Warning, do not leave this machine unattended," at the top left, or make sure there is a hole that is for your X limit switch at the left-hand side. Top. Trust me, as I built the entire gantry upside down my very first go. Only when I couldn't find the limit switch hole did I find it at the bottom right-hand side. And I was at my very last steps of assembling this machine. You'll be adding a new fixing plate that adds an additional stepper motor. I suggest building it on a table, but wait on tightening it all. Center the gantry on a chair. Grab one of your original smaller 2020 aluminum V-groove rails. It's very easy to accidentally tighten it all, and it may be skewed a little. So before tightening any of the 3 screws that you have, 3 wheels on each fixing plate, there's a right and a left, they need to be seated properly in the 2020 V-groove rails. This is going to ensure both fixing plates are level. Slide the rail through. Check to make sure there's no uneven gap as you slide the rail back and forth. Check that there's no wiggle up and down or side to side. The rail you are using should glide smooth and straight. In this view, I have it upside down, so I have 2 wheels making contact with what is actually the top of the rail. If you find your bottom wheel does not seem seated into the V-groove, this is when you would adjust the eccentric nut located to the one side. Just turn it in small increments as you don't want it too tight. You'll know it's too tight when the rail does not glide through smooth and straight. Number 2, before assembly, check that your X rails are identical lengths. Check that your Y rails are identical lengths. It turned out my back X rail was just a hair over 1 millimeter short. Now you're thinking, does this really make a difference? Yes, it does. as this machine needs to run a great deal of width and length parallel at all times. My first build, I was 4 to 5 millimeters out of square. A skewed machine will not allow the gantry to run parallel. So I'm going to make some suggestions on how to prevent this, and at this point, make sure your Y belts are the same exact length as well. I just cut a little bit off of one to get them at the exact same length. Now you will attach the rear feet to one X rail and both Y rails. Don't over tighten these screws just yet. Make sure the Y rail with the 3 holes is on your right hand side facing inwards at the back. So when you turn the machine around or walk around the table to start assembling the front, that they are at the front left. These holes are for your Y limit switch, something that you won't put on until you are ready at the very last to add your wiring harness. Note that there are 3 holes, as it depends what size your laser module is. Your Y limit switch will be placed in the corresponding hole to stop your laser module when homing and keep it from hitting the front rail. I added a 1 millimeter washer to the inside of where the X rail and foot met on the right hand side of the back, so it will be at the left rear when you are at the front of the machine. This made both X rails the same exact length. I added washers here so they will help catch the belt's tooth at the same exact number of teeth on each side, and they also help to keep the belt tight along with the actual belt tightening screws and inset bolts. You're going to see why I took this step in a little bit. Now walk around the table to start assembling the front. It's going to be much easier than turning this monstrosity around. You're now going to slide the laser's gantry on both sides, making sure you have the laser module fixing plate facing front. A clamp can be very helpful to keep the gantry in place and moving around on you. You're now going to add the front X rail, the left foot, and the right hand side control box mount. Don't over tighten the screws just yet. Grab a measuring tape and measure diagonally corner to corner. This is when you begin tightening all the screws and remeasuring that your machine is in fact square. I ended up from being 4 to 5 millimeters out of square at my front right corner on my very first build to just 1 millimeter out. And I figured that was a big improvement. Now this part is extremely important. This is where we are lining up your gantry to run precise and parallel. I measured and used a white Stabilo grease pencil to mark both right and left hand sides precisely to line up the front wheels of the gantry tube. Note, on the fixing plates, one side sticks out more than the other on each one. So use the same front part on either sides to line up a ruler and your wheel on both sides. I found large binder clips did the trick to clamp the gantry in place, front and back. Just be careful, they may fly off and scare the heck out of you. Now you can bring the belt from the back, sliding it under the first back wheel, over the stepper motor's wheel, under the front wheel, and through the front slit hole through the right foot and the left side control box mount. Now, you will go blind, or your vision will go blurry, or you'll lose count a few times trying to count the teeth on the belt. So with the white Stabilo pencil, I made a mark every 10 teeth. So when I was tightening it and pulling more of the belt through the front, it made it much easier to count from the last point how many teeth I had out on the left and right hand sides. So the gantry was perfectly lined up parallel and exact tooth belt placement on each stepper motor. Once I had the washer and the belt screws and inset bolts tightened to keep the belt in place, I was ready to unclip the binder clips. And this is where I noticed my issue, so watch carefully for this. When I removed the left-hand side clips, the gantry stayed in place, no movement. Then I removed the back right-hand side clip. My gantry swung back about ½ an inch. Now that shouldn't have happened. I did a number of troubleshooting here, and I won't go through all my fails to keep this video short. But no, tightening the eccentric nuts on the bottom isn't advised, as you don't want to strain your stepper motors. I myself fell down the YouTube and internet rabbit hole to find a solution of why this was happening. I found a series of videos from one fella troubleshooting the issue with a series of videos, and he never did fix the issue, or he made it worse. Number one, he checked his stepper motors. So yes, while he did have one older stepper motor that did not match any of the newer models and replaced his with a 1601s from Sculpfun, that did not solve his problem. So I checked mine to find all stepper motor models matching. To me, my right-hand side stepper motor was moving maybe too freely, or there was too much force on my gantry to make it want to move backwards on its own. I brought my gantry back to the white mark, lining up the wheel with a ruler once again, and clamped it front and back with the binder clips again. Going to the left-hand side of the gantry, I loosened these two small screws here that hold the plate onto the gantry rail. Returning to the right-hand side, I unfastened the back binder clip and had no movement at all. Okay, great! But not ideal, as these two screws would have to be tightened again. So I put the back binder clip back on and added just one washer right here on the left-hand side so I could tighten them, but take some pressure off. Again, I removed the binder clips and saw no movement. Okay, great! I finished putting my machine together. Now here, I think it's important to note that many people with the gantry not staying parallel were told to turn the voltage screw on their motherboard to allow for more power to run to the additional step motor. Sculpfun even shows you doing this in the assembly video. But hold on! They have backtracked on the Facebook Sculpfun user group to not do this without a multimeter to double check the voltage. Of course, I found no mention of what that voltage was actually supposed to be. Now, this was advised for the Sculpfun S30 Pro 12-volt machine. And I was upgrading my machine to a 24-volt Ultra with a 22-watt laser. There was no way I was fiddling with the voltage screw. And in my mind, I should have plenty power with it being a 24-volt machine now. This brings me back to the fellow on YouTube that had a 33-watt Ultra. So technically, his was a 24-volt machine as well. With a multimeter, he upped his voltage, and this was his result. His machine went squirrely. So no way was I touching that screw. In my mind, the issue is not with the voltage and more power to the machine, when no power to the machine at all was making the gantry skew and not stay parallel all on its own. My first test with the machine connected and powered on, I jogged the gantry to the back, jogged the laser over to the far right corner, and clicked to home the machine. While the right-hand side gantry did not come back parallel, and first try it was about an inch off, so it had moved backwards again. At this point, I decided it was best to take a break from the machine for the evening before I pulled out my hair. The next morning, I was determined to show this machine that I was more stubborn than it was. I knew the machine worked beautifully before with the Y extension. What made it want to do this to me? What had happened, and how can I reinforce the gantry for more stability? As I sat at my computer and looked at my very first laser that was from a different manufacturer, I had noticed they had 4 wheels, 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, unlike the Sculpfun's 2 on top and only 1 on the bottom. So yeah, I checked if maybe these plates were compatible to my Sculpfun so I could add them and take it to 4 wheels, but no, they were not compatible. So ideally, I feel 4 would be better than 3, and perhaps at some point I will take the machine apart and design up 2 plates, 4 in total. In AutoCAD, that 4 wheels could work. But I really needed to get back to work as I had projects pending. I didn't want to take the machine all apart and go back to original to get them done. I also didn't want to be down any further, as I was already down with this machine, as the cord harness that comes with the 22-watt Ultra upgrade kit was way too short for the XY extension. My original S30 Pro 10-watt is a 4-pin plug. The 22-watt Ultra laser is an M30 3-pin plug. I guess Sculpfun has realized a number of people were being silly like me and ordering this kit when, of course, it did state in the description that it was not compatible. Well, I contacted Sculpfun support and they sent me the link for the proper cord harness to purchase. Thank goodness they have after purchase support and are always innovating for silly people like myself. Now, back to my gantry. What had we taken away from the machine to make it less stable? Then it hit me. It was the 5mm drill rod. Well, I didn't have a 39-inch drill rod to run the span of the machine. 36-inch drill rods are a standard size available, and you can get those at any industrial supplier. Only 2-meter rods are available as the next step up in size, and it has to be specially ordered, and I would have to cut it down. I lucked out and found a supplier that I could get only one from, as they normally sell in a box with 5 rods. And I don't need 5 rods. The cost is about $80. Okay, I'm going to order that. But I looked to my very first machine I bought from another manufacturer and decided to borrow its drill rod for now. And along with the Sculpfun drill rod I had placed aside, I connected them to the machine and then connected them together. So, using a CNC 5mm stepper motor coupler, I put one to the left and I put one to the right hand side, and it's not ideal, but I put one in the center. So yeah, definitely not ideal, but I wanted to see if this solved my issue, and it did. Time, after jogging the laser gantry to the back of the machine, jogging the laser and then homing it, it homed precisely parallel each and every time, as technically the 2Y stepper motors should fire together. Woohoo! But hold on, don't leave quite yet. First thing I did on the laser was a line accuracy test to make sure my squares were squares, my circles were circles. I have a slight stigmatism in my eyes that makes circles sometimes look like ovals. So use a ruler to measure accuracy. Trust the ruler, not your eyes. My belt tension on the X and Y axis seemed good. So I threw on my crate lid and I engraved my 46-inch by 19-inch vintage cola sign with no issues. Woohoo! But wait, this is still not the end of the video. Second project. I put my material on, and with the machine turned off, I very carefully and slowly moved it to focus my laser module accurately. I turned on my machine, and my stepper motor on the right seemed seized. It did not want to return home and made a jamming noise. So I quickly turned off the machine. I took my binder clips once again and clipped them front and back on the gantry on both sides. I loosened the stepper motor coupler to the right-hand side Y stepper motor, and then it seemed to release. I tightened the coupler once again to the stepper motor and powered on the machine, and it homed perfectly. The only thing I figured is this gantry does not like to be pushed manually back and forth with the machine powered off when I was focusing the laser, no matter how slowly I moved it. It's not really advised to do that with any machine, as you can cause an electrical charge and short out your motherboard. But hey, many manufacturers show you doing that in their own videos, and that's how I've done it for years. But no longer with this bad boy. I made sure my table and my machine were level at the time of assembly. I now make sure any material is level front to back and side to side with a level, so I'm not using my laser to do that for me anymore. I now only jog the laser gantry with the power on. I will then turn off the machine, use the focus tool, and adjust the laser module to its proper height. I then turn on the machine once again and home the machine. So there's no more manual pushing, and my right-hand side stepper motor has had no further issues. Knock on wood. So I hope I haven't scared any of you from purchasing the XY extension kit. Some people don't have any issues at all, and it worked flawlessly. But if you're like me and figure something's bound to happen, I hope I've prepared you, or you found this video helpful to fix your issues. So please like and subscribe. This Canadian gal appreciates each and every one of you.
Okay, now we're done.